The King of Saudi Arabia.
اليوم في المملكة العربية السعودية.
Shah Faisal.
The only king of the Muslim world whose single order made the superpower America kneel before him, the one who took on the whole world for the freedom of Palestine. But just as Shah Faisal became the greatest leader of the Muslim world, he was shot and martyred by his own nephew, a prince from the Saudi royal family. Where did the Saudi dynasty get so much power from? For that, we must go much further back, to Muhammad bin Saud. About 1,400 years ago, during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he had conquered this whole region of Arabia. But after the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed away, many tribes in Arabia rebelled against the first Caliph Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him. Not only that, some people even falsely claimed prophethood. The most famous false prophet among them was Musaylima al-Kadhdab. So the first Caliph Abu Bakr sent his best general Khalid bin Walid to reconquer those rebellious tribes. Khalid bin Walid rapidly reconquered the region. Finally, his major battle was against the biggest false prophet, Musaylima al-Kadhdab, in the Battle of Yamama. In that battle, Khalid bin Walid defeated Musaylima and his tribe Banu Hanifa so decisively that for the next 1,000 years, Banu Hanifa never stood on their feet again. But after about 1,000 years, from among the descendants of Musaylima's tribe, Banu Hanifa, came a new ruler, the first king of the Saudi dynasty, Muhammad bin Saud. When Saud became king, the world's greatest power then was the Ottoman Caliphate, whose rulers mostly followed Sufism. During the Ottoman period, the situation in Mecca was such that 4 different imams would stand to lead the same prayer in the Grand Mosque: Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali, and none would pray behind the other. Seeing all this, there was a scholar in Arabia who was unhappy with the system, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. When he raised his voice against these practices, people expelled him from his own town. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab had knowledge, but to spread his ideas widely, he needed power. He found that power when he allied with the first Saudi king. The Saud and the Wahhabi families together created a strong rule in the Najd region of Arabia. Still, this Saudi state was no match for the Ottoman Caliphate. The Ottoman Caliphate remained the biggest Muslim power. 200 years later, the Ottoman Empire was taking its last breaths in World War I. There, the British Empire and the Ottomans faced off. The British knew they couldn't topple the Ottomans until they had support from the Arabs, so the British worked hard to make the Arabs rebel against the Ottoman Sultan. They needed a powerful Arab leader for this plan, and they found him, Sharif Hussein of Mecca. He was no ordinary man. He claimed descent from the Prophet's family and was himself a scholar. The British promised Sharif Hussein that if he helped defeat the Ottoman Sultan, they would not abolish the caliphate, but would take it away from the Turks and return it to the Arabs. Hearing this, of course, the Arabs were delighted and joined the British in rebellion against the Ottomans. Because of the Arabs' rebellion, the Ottoman Caliphate, which once ruled vast lands, was reduced to almost nothing. At this point, the British mission seemed complete. They should hand the caliphate to Sharif Hussein, but the British reneged. They offered Hussein a terrible deal. They said they would make him the caliph for the Arabs, but he would have to hand Palestine to the Jews. Sharif Hussein tore up that offer. The British were furious that their puppet had the audacity to defy them, and they withdrew their support from Hussein. After that, there was a strange situation. There was no major Arab leader left on the world stage. Seeing this, a young Arab leader profited the most, Abdulaziz al-Saud. Abdulaziz was the opposite of Sharif Hussein. He didn't care if the caliphate ended. He didn't care about Palestine. He only wanted to become the king of Arabia. The British needed a self-interested Arab leader who would look after his own interests, so after they dropped Hussein, they gave full support to Abdulaziz. With British help, Abdulaziz left Riyadh with his forces to capture Mecca and Medina. Of course, with British assistance, he easily conquered the whole Hijaz. The ulama, religious scholars of Mecca, seeing Abdulaziz's power, placed the authority of the Kaaba in his hand. After conquering Mecca and Medina, Abdulaziz's rule spread across the region, and thus a new state was formed.
اليوم في المملكة العربية السعودية.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Abdulaziz was its first king. King Abdulaziz divided Saudi Arabia into two large parts. Najd, with Riyadh as the capital, where he appointed his eldest son, Saud bin Abdulaziz, as governor, and the Hijaz, where Islam's holiest sites, Mecca and Medina, were, for which he made his second son, Faisal, the governor. Soon after the Saudi state formed, the first oil well in the Arab world was discovered nearby in Bahrain. Seeing this, Abdulaziz and his British friends started searching for oil in Saudi Arabia too. For 6 years, they found nothing. The British scientists wrote in their books that a poor man from the desert led them by the hand to Dammam and told them, "Search here, you will find what you need."
The world's largest supplier of
That's how the world's largest oil discovery was made in Saudi Arabia. When oil was discovered in Saudi, Abdulaziz's luck kept improving. A year later, World War II began. And the world needed oil badly. King Abdulaziz began selling Saudi oil to the world, and Saudi Arabia's economy increased by thousands of times. Abdulaziz, who had been poor, became the most powerful king in the world. In World War II, Abdulaziz firmly stood with America against Hitler's Germany.
Discuss mutual problems of trade and relations with Saudi Arabia.
But after World War II, Abdulaziz's British friends helped create a new state in the world, Israel. When Israel's leaders declared independence,
by the grace of God,
almost immediately many Arab countries attacked Israel. While the whole Arab world went to war against Israel, the greatest Arab king, Abdulaziz, remained silent. Abdulaziz had money and a large army, but he didn't take decisive steps to help Palestine. Only about 800 Saudi volunteers went to fight against Israel. Yet within the Saudi family, there was one man who did speak up for Palestine, Prince Faisal. He stood at the UN and said, "We do not recognize Israel." Years later, as King Abdulaziz lay dying, he expressed regret that the successor should be Faisal rather than Saud, and said he wished he had 3 more sons like Faisal. Still, before his death, he called Faisal and made him swear 7 times that he would remain loyal to his brother Saud. When Abdulaziz died, his eldest son Saud became king. Why did Abdulaziz prefer Faisal over Saud? Because he knew Saud was decadent. Saud had 4 wives, a harem with more than 100 concubines, 115 children total, and lived in 24 luxury palaces. Saud drank alcohol, and when he became king, he began to squander Saudi Arabia's treasury on his family. He decreed that each prince would get millions from the treasury, and he borrowed to build $1 billion palaces for royal princes, which tripled the country's debt. While Saud spent the state's money, one man kept warning him: his brother, Shah Faisal. Saud ignored Faisal's warnings. Faisal resigned his prime ministership in anger and left Saudi Arabia. After Faisal left, conditions worsened, and in 2 years, Saudi Arabia stood on the brink of bankruptcy. Everyone realized that only one man could save the kingdom, Prince Faisal. The Saudi and Wahhabi families begged Faisal to remove his brother Saud and take the throne. Faisal refused. He remembered the oath he had given his father to remain loyal to Saud. He said he would not remove him, but would stay as prime minister and try to save the country. Saud accepted and handed all power to Prime Minister Faisal. Faisal immediately stopped the prince's lavish privileges. He cut off the billions given to princes and confiscated their palaces to make government offices. Most importantly, Faisal abolished slavery in Saudi Arabia for the first time in history. He paid the owners $2,000 per slave from the treasury and freed thousands in one day. To stabilize the economy, Faisal took a loan from the richest man in Saudi at that time, Mohammed bin Laden. Faisal brought Islamic scholars from across the world to teach Saudi children. Among the students attending those schools was Mohammed bin Laden's son, Osama bin Laden. Thanks to Faisal's reforms, Saudi Arabia recovered.
Wanted. Give us Osama bin Laden. Dead or alive.
But everyone knew Saud was only a figurehead and real power lay with Faisal. During this time, Saud returned to Saudi after living comfortably abroad. On a pilgrimage, Umrah, he realized people no longer showed him the respect due to a king, and gradually he began to hate Faisal. Saud and his sons incited people against Faisal because Faisal had ended their luxury. They started a conspiracy to remove Faisal by bribing people to oppose him. Faisal knew about this, but did not act. The real crisis came when Saud sent a letter to Faisal ordering him to appoint Saud's two sons to top ministerial posts, or else he would send royal troops to arrest Faisal. Faisal tore up Saud's letter in front of him, humiliating the king. Saud ordered his royal guard to arrest Faisal and surrounded Faisal's palace. When Faisal came out, the guards who were supposed to arrest him saluted him instead. Faisal laughed. Nevertheless, the guards remained on duty. It is said Saud even tried to have Faisal killed. Finally, Faisal broke his oath to his father and declared that enough was enough. Saud had only a few royal guards with him, while Faisal commanded nearly the entire Saudi army. Faisal ordered the palaces to be cleared of women and children, because now decisions would be made by the sword. Faisal's forces advanced on the king's palace. Saud's troops retreated. The situation grew so tense that the Grand Mufti of Mecca, the leader of the Wahhabi scholars, came to Riyadh to decide. Saud was shocked to find his own clan and the ulama supporting Faisal. Why did they choose Faisal over the king? Two reasons. One, Faisal was a brilliant and capable leader, and two, historically the Saud and the Wahhabi families had joined to make the first Saudi state 200 years earlier, and Faisal was the only man who belonged to both families. His father Abdulaziz was from the Saud clan, and his mother was from the family of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, so both families backed Faisal. Saud was finally removed from the throne, and Prince Faisal became the new king of Saudi Arabia.
King Faisal, a desert warrior.
A desert warrior. In his first speech he said, "People, consider me not as your king, but as your friend and servant. Only Allah is real king." Faisal became king with the ulama's support, but soon his actions made the ulama turn against him. Faisal opened girls' schools, universities, and launched Saudi Arabia's first TV channel with both male and female anchors. The ulama could not tolerate this. A university professor wrote in a Saudi newspaper that the earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around. When the Grand Mufti Sheikh bin Baz heard this, he declared in another article that it was false, that the sun revolves around the earth and the earth is static. Sheikh bin Baz's article spread worldwide, and people laughed at Saudi Arabia and its ulama, and ridiculed King Faisal as well. When Faisal learned of this, he ordered the newspapers that printed it to be collected and burned, which made the ulama even more hostile. 20 years later, a Saudi prince traveled to space and returned describing the Earth from orbit. After that, Sheikh bin Baz admitted his error and asked for forgiveness. Back then, the ulama were so strict, they had even declared vanilla ice cream haram. But the conflict between the ulama and Faisal began in earnest when he launched the first TV channel. The ulama considered TV haram and protested everywhere. A prince once attacked Faisal's TV station and fired on police officers, leading a police officer to kill that prince to protect himself. The prince's father demanded vengeance, asking Faisal to hand over the policeman so he could have the policeman executed. Faisal refused. He said the policeman was only doing his duty. Faisal insisted that anyone who broke the law, prince or commoner, must be punished. Remember the death of that prince because it eventually led to Faisal's own assassination. Outside Saudi Arabia, Faisal was gradually becoming an international leader.
Majesty warmly welcomed the dignified Middle Eastern ruler.
Soon after Faisal became king, the war between Pakistan and India erupted. Faisal fully supported Pakistan and began supplying cheap oil to help Pakistan's military, bringing Saudi and Pakistan closer. After the India-Pakistan war, another war with Israel also occurred. When Faisal's father Abdulaziz had not helped Palestine, Faisal as king sent 20,000 troops and substantial assistance to the Arabs and Palestinians. Despite Faisal's efforts, the Arabs were badly defeated and Israel's territory expanded threefold. It is said Faisal was deeply saddened after this defeat. People say they never saw him smile again. And he obsessed over how to avenge Israel's gains. Faisal used his wealth to rebuild many Muslim countries and began buying fighter jets, tanks, and warships to strengthen Saudi forces for revenge. Then an event shook the world. A Christian set fire to the third holiest Muslim site, Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. He burned the minbar, pulpit, Salahuddin Ayyubi had placed 800 years earlier, and even a part of the mosque's roof collapsed. When asked why he did it, he said he believed Jesus Christ would return only after Al-Aqsa was destroyed. The Israeli court's lenient treatment, labeling him a madman rather than a terrorist and giving no real punishment, outraged Muslims worldwide. Muslims everywhere protested against Israel, and all eyes turned to King Faisal as the Muslim world's leader. Faisal called together Muslim leaders and announced the formation of an Islamic organization, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, to unite Muslim states against Israel. Faisal then began planning pressure and actions against Israel, and in 1973, on Yom Kippur, a major Jewish festival, Arab armies launched a surprise attack on Israel and initially captured significant territory.
Israelis celebrating the holiday of Yom Kippur.
Israel was unprepared and began to retreat under pressure. King Faisal sent a message praising the fighters and urging them on. It looked as if Muslims might crush Israel within days. But America, the superpower Faisal feared, intervened to help Israel.
The United States has stood by the side of Israel.
Israel's Prime Minister asked the United States for $2 billion and military aid. The US responded by sending arms and support, and with American help, Israel pushed back the Arab forces. When Faisal learned of American intervention, he called his oil minister at 8 p.m. to his office. The TV channels usually shut down at 9, and he declared, "I, Faisal bin Abdulaziz, order that oil shipments to America be stopped." Arab oil-producing states accepted Faisal's decision and stopped sending oil to the US overnight. The oil weapon was used, and America was left helpless. America relied on Arab oil for about 80% of its supply, and this caused an unprecedented economic crisis in the US after World War II. Faisal's embargo had huge effects.
The world decided to use their oil as a political weapon.
Gas stations ran out of fuel, some places saw blackouts, and people went back to candles and wood fires. In America, 500,000 people lost jobs, and that year Christmas was dark in many places. Works that normally lit up Christmas were instead blacked out. The embargo hit not only the West, but countries in the East like Japan.
Meeting on the oil crisis.
Japan suffered a crisis and felt the embargo like dropping an atomic bomb. The US considered attacking Saudi to remove Faisal and install a compliant prince. But Faisal warned that if the US attacked, he would set fire to all the oil wells in the Arab world. Destroying America. When asked what would happen to Saudi, Faisal replied that Saudis had long survived on camels and dates and could do so again, but the Americans could not live without oil. Faisal's famous speech was, "I am not a king who fights over the telephone. When war comes, you will find me on the front lines.
أنا بنفسي وإخوتي وأبنائي أمامكم اقتصرنا فقط على الخطط الشرق والغرب اتفقوا على هضم حقوق العرب. نحن لسنا ممن يطلب الإعانات والحروب بل بتقسيم فلسطين أن يخلصوا وطنهم السليم. ولو أجمع العرب جميعا جهود إسرائيل فلن ندخل معهم في هذا الاتفاق.
He declared he didn't care what the West or East thought. He would go to any lengths for the freedom of Palestine and would never accept Israel even if the rest of the Arab world did. Muslims everywhere united under Faisal's leadership. At an OIC conference in Lahore, Pakistan, Muslim leaders discussed many things, including for the first time talk of an Islamic nuclear bomb. A famous photograph from that conference showed many leaders together. But later many of those leaders were assassinated one by one. Faisal's power grew so much that even America bowed to him. America, Europe and Japan came begging for oil, and when Faisal's demands were met, he lifted the embargo. Even after lifting the embargo, oil prices remained high and Saudi Arabia's economy surged, from $2 billion to $50 billion during Faisal's reign. Property prices doubled weekly, and construction boomed to the point that people began importing cement by helicopter. Saudis became extremely wealthy. When Faisal was at the peak of his power, he delivered what is said to have been his final speech.
هذا ننتظر ضمير العالم أين هو ضمير العالم الشريف يناديكم التغيث بكم أيها الإخوة لا يخيفنا نخشى الموت هناك موتة أفضل أن يموت الإنسان مجاهدا في سبيل الله أرجو الله سبحانه وتعالى عن مقدساتنا له إذا كتب لي الموت أرجو الله سبحانه وتعالى الموت شهيدا في سبيل الله.
What are we waiting for? Where is the honor of the world? O my brothers, Al-Aqsa is calling you. It is crying out for your help. What are we afraid of? Of death. There is no better death than fighting in the path of Allah. My prayer is that if Palestine is not liberated by my hands, do not keep me alive even a moment. O Allah, grant me the death of a martyr. Some months later, while Faisal was seated in a majlis, a man shot him. People rushed him to the hospital. It is said Faisal's last words were, "I forgive my killer." News of Faisal's martyrdom spread like wildfire, and people everywhere wept. Leaders from around the world came to his funeral, and Faisal's janazah, funeral prayer, was held. When his coffin was taken for burial, people surrounded his vehicle and cried. TV coverage on the very channel Faisal had founded showed anchors in tears saying that the father of the Muslim Ummah had died. The man who shot Faisal was none other than the son of Faisal's own brother. Because he was a prince, when he walked up with a gun, no one tried to stop him. As Faisal approached his nephew, the nephew fired 2 shots at his head and murdered him. When asked why he did it, the prince gave a strange answer. 10 years earlier, his brother had attacked the TV station Faisal had created and was shot dead by police. He said he had waited 10 years to avenge his brother because Faisal had forgiven the policeman instead of avenging his brother. The curious question is, how did this prince suddenly remember his brother after 10 years? Where had he been for those 10 years? He had been living a life of debauchery in America, clubs, drugs, girlfriends, and had even been arrested for drug use. He returned to Saudi from America shortly before the attack. Many believe Faisal was not killed for family revenge, but because the US and Israel benefited most from his death. Immediately after Faisal's assassination, relations between Israel and some Arab states warmed, and after Faisal, no Saudi monarch again had the courage to stand up to America. Within hours of Faisal's death, the Saudi royal family selected King Khalid bin Abdulaziz. He ordered that the prince who attempted to kill Faisal be executed publicly. But with the new king in place, another terrible event occurred in the history of Muslims, an attack on the Kaaba.